We have a right to free speech. And we say that so casually. Why? Why do we have and need the right to free speech? So we can cheer for those Cowboys? Hey, you see that football game the other day? That's part of it. It was really a rhetorical question. We don't have freedom of religion so that we can discuss, well, it is so we can discuss literature, but primarily it is so that we can badmouth the government. We have a right to alter or abolish the government. If I wanted to alter the government, now I know that's a really strange hypothetical, because we all know the government is perfect just the way it is. But hypothetically, if I wanted to change it, let me assume hypothetically that I thought taxes were too high. That giving, my federal, state, and FICA taxes total 48%, and I'm just not crazy about giving half of what I make to the government. How would I go about changing it? What would be the first step? How about getting behind a podium and going, ladies and gentlemen, I think taxes are too high. Are you with me? We need to get consensus so that we, the people, can go in and make changes to the government. Freedom of speech is primarily freedom of political speech. And when George Bush says, you're either with us or you're against us, the Alien and Sedition Act prevented people from saying anything bad about the government. If you go to a Republican rally with an anti-George Bush t-shirt, you get handcuffed and escorted out by the Secret Service. What was the defining characteristic of Stalinism? Suppressing political dissent. You're either with us or you're against us. This is chilling. When I was running for president, I went to a university and they had me speaking in this auditorium. It was a beautiful auditorium. 300, 350 seats. It looked like it had just recently been built. Beautiful facility. And I had 12 people in the first row. I thought, well, this is really silly. I got this, I'm echoing throughout the auditorium. I said, let's go across the hall. We've got a classroom. We can sit closer. We can see each other, face to face. Talk a little bit more informally. Nope, can't do that. You're a political candidate, presidential candidate. You have to be in the auditorium because the auditorium is a free speech zone. I almost fell off the stage. I said, what about the hallway? What about the rest of the campus? No, that's a speech-free zone. And I will tell you exactly what I told those students. Anywhere I happen to be standing is a free speech zone. The government doesn't tell me what I can or cannot say. The government doesn't tell me where I can or cannot say it. I have freedom of speech because none of you are big enough to shut me up. That's why I have freedom of speech. And when we hear someone who's being sexist or racist or homophobic standing on a soapbox, we go, oh my gosh, the person is sexist, they're racist, they're homophobic. We got to get the government to drag them down off their soapbox. Wrong. If you violate or allow the government to violate somebody else's freedom of speech, what does that mean about your speech? You got to get a permit.
Privilege, not a right.
It's a privilege. And after I heard that, free speech zone was kind of that phrase, I was listening, I heard something on TV and I turned, and at the Democratic Convention in Boston that year, they had a free speech zone 2 miles away from the convention. It was a chain link fence surrounded by razor wire. Does that sound like a free speech zone to you? Oh, look, Mom, Auschwitz, another free speech zone. And they wanted me to go to the Republican convention. They had a rally out in Central Park. I said, okay. And they're going to have a bunch of people there. Okay, yeah, I kind of figured that. Well, we don't know if you want to go or not. Why? Well, because the Libertarian Party in New York City didn't get a permit. I went, so well, we thought you might be worried about getting arrested. I'm willing to lay down my life, liberty or death, and you think I'm worried about a silly permit? Wake up! Freedom of speech, freedom of the press. Do we have freedom of the press? Freedom of the media in this country? With every, ABC, NBC, I mean, they're like rubber stamped. They look like little robotic dolls telling you exactly the same story. If the only place you get your news is from television, you are living under a rock. We have a right to peaceably assemble. You don't need permits. And you also, and this is important, have a right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. What does that mean in 2007? It means that you can file a lawsuit against the government. Philosophically, does the government have a right to violate your rights? No, it's a non sequitur. So, if they do, hypothetically, the government accidentally steps on your political toes, then what? Well, then you can file a lawsuit against the government and presumably win. Of course, in our court systems today, the government claims to have sovereign immunity. You can't file a lawsuit against us because we're sovereign. No, we are sovereign. You have privileges. And I ought to throw you in jail just for asserting the idea that you had sovereign immunity. This is Illinois. Has anybody here heard of the Second Amendment? Or have they just like completely deleted that?
Pretty close.
There's I'm genuinely pleased, they've created a First Amendment museum over at the Tribune building in Chicago. Tribune, freedom of the press, First Amendment. I could not wait. I still haven't been there. I want to go to the First Amendment Museum and go, this is wonderful. I was a presidential candidate. I wrote a book all about... You know what we ought to do? We ought to take the next floor down and turn it into the Second Amendment Museum. You know how many people would have heart attacks in Illinois? This is incredible.